Okay, Tia, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm super excited to talk to you because I feel like with your company being called Arrive at Happy, we can all use a little happiness right now, especially at the end of the year. We all want to start off 2022 with like a lot of happiness. And I think that's what our companies need right now. So you're the founder of Arrive at Happy. And I've actually never heard of a certified chief happiness coach or officer.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about that? Like, is that an actual, like, did you create that?
No. So I got certified in Copenhagen, Denmark in 2019 as a chief happiness officer. I decided to go to Scandinavia to do it because the countries come up really high on the World Happiness Report that the United Nations does. And the employees and people working in companies in the Scandinavian countries are a lot happier than American employees. So I wanted to go learn how Danes run their companies, really. And so I went there for a week, and there was about 24 of us from 16 different countries, all getting certified during this week, learning from CEOs and other experts on how to create really, really happy teams so that the business flourishes.
Yep.
So that's what the certification is. And you can get it in the United States at Florida International University now.
That's really cool. Now, like, I know obviously it's very extensive because you have your company, but is there like was a main takeaway of like what we're doing wrong as Americans?
There wasn't one main takeaway. No, it's multifaceted. I mean, society is so different over there. Of course, like university is free, healthcare is free. So there's a lot less stress on citizens, of just how the
making ends meet.
High tax. Yeah. Everyone has like 1 or 2 years off for maternity leave paid. It's very, very different. But in terms of leadership, a lot more autonomy. So there's a lot more sort of trust, and the organizations are a lot flatter. And what I learned is that the C-suites, the executives, when they're looking to make big decisions, it's not like the executive team is all deciding and maybe talking to then, the next, like the director level. They're actually going to the front lines, the hourly employees, to get information to make decisions. So it's less of it's more like, we know that all the answers are actually here.
We make a TV show to do that, right? What was it? Undercover Boss? Like,
yes.
We can't just go and ask our employees. Like, you have to have a TV show to go. Anyway, just a side note. That's what just made me think about that. Like they, if you ever watch one of those TV shows, you're like, wait, shouldn't they just already be asking all that anyway? Like, why do we have a TV show about this?
Right. Yes, definitely. So I would say autonomy and trust. And one other big difference is that there's a lot of constant feedback, both feedback for improvement and positive appreciation, specific positive appreciation, just as a work culture, so that people always are getting accolades and getting motivated by the good stuff. And then also learning really quickly, this is what I need to change. And so that's happening daily. And so it's not like annual review. This is how what you need to improve. It's like this ongoing. And they also only work on average 37 hours a week.
But like as a manager, or owner of a company, that's a lot of work to provide a lot of feedback to people, right? Because like you're trying to fit in a lot during the day, and sometimes just even slow down to give directions, forget feedback. Like I would think a lot of entrepreneurs have a problem with that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it needs to be part of your rhythm. It needs to be very intentional. To your point, it needs to be scheduled and ideally delegated. So it's not all on a few people's shoulders, but throughout the organization. But yes, it is work, but it's one of the key ways to increase happiness while working, and happiness while working drives sales, productivity, obviously loyalty and retention. And so customer happiness. So even though it's a lot of work and effort, there's a financial return.
You decided you were working in corporate America in the hotel industry, running sales teams at some pretty high profile hotels. And what made you decide like, okay, I'm going to stop, doing the corporate America thing and do my own company?
Yes. So I had the idea for my own company about 12 years ago. And the idea was, I'm going to start a happiness company and help other people working, be happier. And I had gotten feedback throughout my life. How do you stay so happy? Where do you get this positive energy? And so I realized at a pretty young age, like I believe I can help other people. But I didn't do anything about it. Fast forward, I am the director of sales and marketing for a beautiful hotel in LA. And I have a 2-year-old little girl and a 3-month-old little girl. And I go back to work at this super high pressure, stressful job, managing a big team, with a goal of $60 million. And all of a sudden, because of that change of life circumstances, I was really struggling with my own happiness. It wasn't the first time that I had been unhappy, but it was definitely the lowest I had felt. And I wasn't sure. I sort of thought, oh, maybe this is my new normal. Maybe I'm not really going to be that happy person anymore. And that was really terrifying. And I, had this reflection point of like, okay, I've always heard about this happiness company, and that's when I started basically researching happiness. And I discovered that there's a science of happiness and went down this whole journey over the last 5 years.
That's great. Now that's pretty intimidating and scaring to be like, okay, I'm giving up my paycheck, my like known commodity,
Bonus,
everything.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Did you start doing that on the weekends and on the side, or were you like, okay, I'm going?
No, I did it. I built it for probably 2.5 years on the side. So evenings, weekend mornings, sometimes doing stuff at my corporate job, like little things here and there as I was basically studying and thinking, how could this, what are the different ways that I could make revenue? What additional certifications and education do I want and need to grow? And I had a phenomenal business coach who I worked with for about 7 months to really design what the company could be and think about the transition journey. So, and actually for my last year at corporate America, before I left full-time to be an entrepreneur, I negotiated that I would take a pay cut and only work part-time as director of sales and marketing, which I didn't think they would go for, but they did. And so I only went to the hotel 3 days a week, and that gave me more runway to build my company.
Oh, that's great. Now, it's super hard when you have an idea and you try to implement it to get clients, right? So how did you do that? Like, what was your first steps to being like, I'm going to get my first client? And then is it word of mouth, or how else did you do that?
Yeah. So I will say I have a bit of an advantage in that my whole corporate background is sales and marketing. So I love sales. I love marketing. I love customers. So basically I looked at, okay, what's going to be my first product that I'm going to sell? And it actually was high-end one-on-one coaching. And so with that, I used my network of friends, colleagues, families, and just started putting the word out. And I thought of who needs me? Like, who are these? And it was female leaders who are moms. Like, that was kind of how I started. And then once I started doing that, I was like, okay, I know I don't want to do one-on-one. This isn't all of what I want to do. So I was like, okay, workshops, and actually want my company to be B2B. And I started doing these events, and I invited friends, families, clients, colleagues, and sort of like did these test runs of events at my friend's studio in Playa del Rey. And I got raving feedback. And once I got that feedback, I had the confidence and the knowledge to then go start selling to corporations. And then that's when I really started scaling my business, doing leadership development and talks and executive retreats.
The first two things that come to mind when I hear your story is, okay, then I would think most entrepreneurs, at least I would feel this way, is how do you price yourself? I think that's a big thing, right? Because everyone wants to underprice themselves.
Yes.
So how did you figure out, okay, I'm going one-on-one, I'm calling my friends. How did you figure out what you were asking to charge?
Yeah. So I was connected to other coaches in the community, and I know what I paid my coach, who had been coaching for like 20 years. So I sort of had the low, and she was very expensive. And I knew, though, I was like, I've been coaching salespeople for 15 years. So even though it's a different type of coaching, like I have a lot of coaching experience. So with that, I sort of used those two kind of metrics. And I started off high just because I think I'd been coaching salespeople for so long. I felt confident in that. When I reflect back on when I started off with corporate, I definitely underpriced myself because I had never done it before. And now over time, I've definitely increased what I charge to companies and what I charge for conferences and all of that. But I started off just looking at time, effort, and value, looking at like, okay, this is this size of a company. This is how many people. And the other thing that really helped me was pretty early on, I became a very active member and a board member actually for the National Speakers Association. And that's a network of 1,800 professional speakers in the United States. And I was a board member with the LA chapter. And so that I mentors and just learnings and everything. So I've gained a lot of information about there's the business of speaking, the business of consulting from the National Speakers Association.
That's great. And I see you have an evidence-based actual business program. It's called the Arrive at Happy Business Growth Program. Because I think that's another thing. It's okay, I'm going to charge this. I'm going to have a customer. I know how to do it, but how do I actually quantify it and put it into an actual program with an actual curriculum? I think that's pretty intimidating as well. So can you talk a little bit about that in your program?
Yeah, sure. So after I finished my coaching certification, I studied with a Harvard professor, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, who taught positive psychology at Harvard. So once I got a couple of certifications from him, and then I got a certification in applied neuroscience, I felt very confident. I was like, okay, I know a lot about human happiness and being happy at work. Then when I went to Denmark and understood what research-based, what leaders can do to drive happiness, I was like, I have enough to create this program. And so it's a 4-phase process where the first is analysis and discovery. Phase 2 is where I work with leaders and the leadership transformation. Phase 3 is on with the team members, with the teams and the hourly employees. And then phase 4 is all about creating really, really happy customers with the sales teams and the people that are customer facing. And so that's how I created the program. And I will say sprinkled in with my hotel leadership experience.
That's great. So that's pretty much geared towards pretty established companies that they're selling something, product, service.
Yeah. I work with, I would say, definitely small to medium-sized companies are the majority of my clients. On the smaller side right now, I'm working with a law office that has 25 people. So it's not all really big companies, but yes, it's established in that there's a team.
Is it now word of mouth, or do you advertise? How do you get most of your clients?
Yes, it's word of mouth. It's also me. I prospect and I sell my business weekly. I also people will find me now just by SEO. I'm on a few different sites where people will put in, motivational speaker. And on some of these sites, I'm ranked pretty high. And then referrals from other speakers. I work with a couple of speakers bureaus, but I've really grown my business with my network. And I would say the majority of the sales have been my efforts. And then now, of course, referrals happening.
When you say your efforts, is that doing podcasts like this, or is there other things that you're doing?
Reaching out, so I know, CEOs of companies or VPs of sales, and I will call people, I will send them videos and reach out and know what's going on with their company and do, actual
cold calling. Yeah, prospecting. Yeah. Okay,
yeah. Cool. But I don't think it's cold calling because it's people that I have relationships with. Executives that I know. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So what have you found to be the most challenging part of being an entrepreneur?
Probably that it's always on my mind. That I think that the mental separation of, I have 2 little kids and
it's a third baby.
Exactly. And I'm so passionate about it. I'm sure you can appreciate this. And the listeners is I'm maybe too passionate about it sometimes so I think it's creating the mental boundaries, the time boundaries. I'll stop. And I'm for example, we were in Maui last week and there was a lot of time I was thinking about Arrive at Happy. And I'm okay, just focus on the waves or,
just focus on pushing your kid on the swing.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that, that piece. And then the other one, again, because I'm such my lens is so sales and marketing is I always feel like I could be selling more. I think I always wish I had more time because I know if I had more time, I could grow it even faster. So I think it's also having patience. It's not okay, this isn't a sprint. They're going to have this company for the next 2 decades, but I get impatient.
No, totally. Now, have you used social media extensively to help grow your company?
Yes, absolutely. So the 2 platforms I use and have used the most have been Instagram and LinkedIn. By far LinkedIn, just because B2B, I've gotten leads and people reaching out and interview requests from LinkedIn. And then I started doing weekly YouTube videos, gosh, maybe like 9 months ago, sometime. Yeah, about a year ago. So that's another platform that I'm working to grow just because I know it's the number 2 search engine.
Yeah. Has that been hard? Do you have any insight about that?
It's like a slow and steady. And so I think whereas I was able to grow Instagram pretty quickly. And so I saw that feedback of like efforts and then you get results back. But I know, and all of the speaker context, everyone's just like, stick with YouTube, like keep doing it, be consistent. It's going to pay off. Like just keep going.
It takes
a lot of people
while.
quit.
Yeah.
It just takes a long time. Exactly.
Obviously, you were saying you have children and you're an entrepreneur, you're running your own show. Like, what are you doing to keep it balanced? Like you were saying, you're having a hard time, like mentally, but do you have a morning routine? Is there any kind of insights that you can give as far as like, I don't know, to make your life easier? Like,
yes,
any hacks to balancing it all?
I use my calendar as my guide. So, and I have some expectations for myself around different areas. So sleep is really, really important to me. So I'm very good at going to bed, making sure that I get 7 to 8 hours every single night. Like I'm really, really good at sleep. I also have a goal that I exercise 4 times a week. And I will, even though I always feel like my to-do list and my work, there's always so much to do, I will make sure that I exercise 4 days a week because I know it makes me a better mom, entrepreneur. I know it helps my brain. So I do that. I try and eat really healthy too. I don't have an exact morning routine. I sort of go on the flow. Like, so for example, if my husband and I stay up watching Saturday Night Live and having some wine, I'm not like, oh, I need to get up at 5 a.m. and exercise. But if I go to bed early, some mornings I will get up and exercise before the kids get up. So it's more in a flow of how I'm feeling and kind of what happened the night before also. So I kind of do that. And I know my productivity times and I know when I'm like at my best. So usually my working hours are sort of some days 9 to 4, some days 9 to 2. And if I know I need to work a lot more that week for client demands or whatever's going on, book launch stuff, I will go to bed early and I will get up, like I'll set my alarm for 4:45. And there's some times, but not all the time, where I will work before my kids come up because my brain stops working at 8 p.m. There's some people that can work at night. I'm not one of those people. I literally can't function. And I will schedule date nights. I will schedule meditation in my calendar. Really, my calendar is like,
you like a time block it, is what they say.
Time block. Exactly. Yes, I will time block it. Like, perfect example, my mom's visiting right now for a few weeks because she's in Mexico for vacation and she's visiting. So I was like, I need to have one-on-one time with her. And I was like, let's go for a walk, Mom. And right before this, I went for a walk with her for an hour. Even though, so I think it's being intentional. And I will say one other thing is I look, and I've done this for years, even the hotel industry, sort of Friday, Saturday, even Sunday, I will be looking at my calendar for the next week and asking myself, do I have enough space to execute? Do I have enough space to be present for my husband and kids? Do I have enough space? And because sometimes it'll look crazy and I'll look at it and say, I need more space. And I'll like cancel things or move things so that I don't feel overwhelmed and frantic.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay. This is a really random question, but how do all your books are either red, orange, yellow, or blue?
Yeah, the light's hitting it, but I organize my books by color. They weren't organized like that, but one of my friends said, you should organize your books by color.
I understand that, but most my books aren't colored like that. I have white books. I have, what I mean? Black books.
I have a lot of happiness books, and happiness books are usually yellow and orange.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. If I look at the top row, because there's blue on the second and white and some black on the bottom.
Yeah. So I'm like, wait, how does she have so many the rainbow color there looking? Yeah. It's nice looking. My daughter's preschool had them all, but I can understand how kids' books are, but adult books, I'm always amazed when people can do that. I'm going to go home and try doing that when I get home.
A bit of a joyful feeling.
Yeah, very organized and zen. Okay, so I have a question to ask you. I'm sure you know this stat, but only 1.7% of female entrepreneurs ever reach $1 million in sales.
I learned that stat from you.
Yeah. And so I've been really trying to dive in to figure out why is that? Why is it not higher? Especially because, there's 50% women who are starting companies, 50-50. So if you were to give one or two reasons why you think might be causing that or what they can be doing differently, what would it be?
Yeah. Number one, I would say it's mindset. It's so mindset. I know just from my experience of I will, as soon as I recently just sold the most expensive package experience to this company. And once I sold it, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to add on another 15K for the next sale, So I think so much is mindset. I think it's confidence. And I think it's believing in worth and value. I really, really do.
Well, that's why I was asking you the question about what you charge. Because I think women, when they're like, okay, I'm going out on my own, no matter what it was, if you're a photographer, if you're whatever it is, even if you're a chef charging dinner, right? Cooking a meal, it's that uncomfortable, what is it worth? Because everyone wants to undercut themselves. They're afraid to ask. And
you're afraid to ask. Exactly. No. And if I look back, I now 4 years in, my confidence level of what I want to charge in. And I think you also were talking about mentors in your book too, right? So feeling like we could do it on our own and it's no, you need to have, and when that's kind of when I talked about the National Speakers Association, people who've been doing it for 20 years and say, charge this, do this, this is what this is worth. This is what other people are charging. So yeah, I think the main is mindset. And then also I think it's communicating the value. I really think it's communicating value. And there's this extremely successful consultant named Alan Weiss. I've learned so much from him on just how to communicate value. And it goes back to the confidence of how you communicate that in writing and verbally to prospective clients, that it's not about your time, or it's not about, to your point, what the chef delivers. It's about the value of what that is.
What are they getting? No matter what it is. It could be the meal, and then it's organic and it's a healthy.
It's not the steak, or for me, it's not the talk. It's what does that do to your organization, or what does that do to your family, whatever you're selling, right? So from my perspective, those are the two.
No, those are good ones. I mean, I'm not a marketing salesperson, and I've, doing Beauty Counter, I've learned a lot more about it, but it was eye-opening to me when someone made an analogy of if you're selling a ride on an airplane, you're not selling the ride on the airplane, you're selling the destination, right? You're selling the Tahiti trip on the beach. Right. It's what you're envisioning them to be when they arrive. It's not hey, you're sitting in a sardine can with 200 other people in an air 20,000 feet of right? It's where you're to feel when you get to where you're going. So it's the same idea.
Yeah, so exactly. How lives are going to be changed. And and it just makes me think this is something that should be taught to females in high school. Of communicating your value, whether you're in corporate America, whether you work at a nonprofit, whether you're an entrepreneur, of just knowing those stats. We need to start earlier in education.
Because it's even asking for a raise, right? I think men in general have no problem going in and asking for a raise, whereas women are afraid to. And I'm generalizing, obviously.
Right. No, and I mean, to think back of this is obviously societal, cultural, there's all these different reasons why. Good thing we're moving in the right direction, but and I know you're helping people do it faster with this podcast.
Yeah, but we want to please, right? And I think a lot of females don't think big enough. They kind of sell themselves short. And I think that's really super important. Okay, so to end, is there any piece of advice or any words of wisdom besides the two that you just gave me of your experience and what you went through? Any kind of, I wish I had known this when I started, or this is what I would give somebody starting out advice?
Yeah. My advice is another piece of advice, which has helped me grow fast. A lot of people will say, whoa, you're doing things really fast. How are you doing it? So this is a key principle that I used when I was a director of sales, and I use it as an entrepreneur. If you want to do something, whether it's write and launch a book or start this, whatever you want to do, find someone who's really successful at that and who's done it. Pay them and fast track yourself. When I look back at money I've invested in my business, I don't regret any of the investments, and some have been very big investments, but I know, I'm seeing the fruits of it, already come back, and I know it will continue to. So I think a way to go faster is hire experts, hire experts to help you. And I would say something I've learned and looking back is there's different people who have given me ideas, and even different organizations I'm a part of who have given ideas. And there were a few different areas of my business that I basically tried to be too diverse early on. I was like, I can offer this and I can do this and I can do this. And now I'm really focused on like, this is what my business does. It does this and this, and it's all these really big high ticket things.
You want to like specialize instead of being the jack.
What I've learned is like, what is the main thing you sell? What is the second? What is the third? Like what, of course, when you get bigger with team and everything, but I sort of experimented and launched different things and then was like, oh no, I don't really want to do that. When I think back, I'm like, that was a waste of time. Not so much waste of money, but that was a waste of time. So that's what I would tell my old self, like just focus on one or two and grow those before you start adding more.
What would you say to your first point that you were just talking about hiring experts, and what areas have you done that?
So I've hired experts to help me with speaking early on. For example, like I went to a speaking retreat with this woman anyway. So that was like an example. I hired an expert to land me a TEDx talk. Hired an expert to help me write and publish a book. I've hired an expert to help me launch my book. I've hired branding experts. Like I think things that I'm like, I need to do this and I don't really know. And I move very, very fast. So when someone's like, you could take my online course. And I'm like,
I know. No, I don't want a course. Like I
just want someone to tell me, I'm like, let's spend a day together. I'll pay you some money and let's just do this. Like, I don't want to
because that's what you can do right now. You can buy all these courses. I'm like, yeah, but that's me doing it. I need somebody else to do it. If I'm going to spend $1,000, I'd rather put it towards somebody else. Like, that's why I was asking you. Cause I feel like right now you can buy so many courses, which are great if you need to get your feet wet and be able to understand the lingo, but like to teach yourself, like all that info, unless you're on a shoestring budget, it's time.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, those are some key ones that come to mind. And even consulting. So I do speaking and leadership development, and consulting and advising executives is another area. And so instead of me figuring out, I hired someone, I did 6 calls with this person, and basically like, he's been consulting for 30 years. So why am I going to try and figure it out on my own? Let me just download his brain and be a sponge. I mean, I read a lot of books too, and I do self-educate, but I think when I want to move quick on things, it's like find someone, do it, and then get the result faster.
And what advice would you give to somebody? Because I feel like I've hired people sometimes and I think they're the expert, and then it winds up being like a waste of money. Yes. So is there like, do you get peer review? Is there someplace where are you going to validate it to make sure that it's well money spent?
Yes. I always ask for phone numbers and contacts of 3 of their clients, like either current clients or recent past clients.
And they'll give it to you?
And I will, yes. And if they don't, I would never work with them. So I do. And I think that's just because for salespeople, I would always do reference checks, and I would never hire salespeople without talking to lots of people. So I do that. And I also listen very closely for their guaranteed results, of what I'm going to have, and making sure that there isn't vagueness in what I'm going to walk away with, both knowledge and kind of what we're talking about too, the value of it as well. But yeah, I would say lots of homework. And then even though they maybe have a really fancy website and talk a big talk, I try and tune into my intuition too. Like, what's my gut telling me, and how much experience do they have?
This has been amazing. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to cover?
The only other thing I would say is that my book, Be a Happy Leader, is coming out January 18th, and you can find it on happyleaderbook.com. Thank you. Yes. And arriveathappy.com has all my information. And yeah, I would say for everyone listening that for people who are entrepreneurs and people growing their businesses, it's so easy, because I get the trap myself of just continuously working and drive, go. And just the reminder to take care of yourself, of your mind, your body, your soul, your personal relationships. And that even though you're taking time away from work and success, that by focusing on those other areas of life, it'll be holistic success. So that would be my last point.
It's true. It like clears your head and makes you a better leader and a better entrepreneur and a better business person. Because if you're tired and worn out, it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I wish you much success with your launch. That's super exciting. Thank you so much for your time and have a happy new year.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.